Greetings, and it is Wednesday, July 13th, according to my computer, so hopefully you're all here and looking for Ogma's Oratory. It has been an interesting month as usual. Hey, that works. Alright, so I want to just check and make sure that sound works. Apparently that does. I don't know what happened to the hold music. I've got it set up. Well, I do know what happened to the hold music. I have new software. Let me check the sound real quick. July. Okay, you can hear me, so we're good to go there. Alright, wow. Alright, so it's the middle of summer. It's past the middle of summer. It's actually after midsummer, so we're here enjoying. Let me see if I can get this whole thing to work properly. Hey, that seems to work. It has been a fun and interesting time. Last month I was talking about the fact that I had to replace all my electrical for my house. That's been working great. Love the fact that I don't have to worry about power anymore. And then I got a notice about a week ago, from the people who do the software that I use, saying, "Hey, there's an upgrade," and it's a much better system. It's version 7. Go ahead and download. So I did, and then I have found out it's a completely new interface, and a lot of the stuff that I had set up for the previous version doesn't work. And so what you don't know, but Marcus does, because he's been here with me the past hour, is all of the running around I've been doing trying to get everything set up to work properly. We'll see how well that works. Speaking of which, let's bring Marcus in. Hey Marcus, how are you doing?
Hey Ken, how you doing?
I'm doing much better now. So for those who don't know, this is Marcus Leader. He is an old friend of mine. He used to do a spot, and hopefully, I'm going to turn the sound up here on my YouTube real quick when I see you come live, because I want to make sure that they can hear you this time. Last time we did this, they couldn't hear you, so I'm hopeful that everything is working now that I've got the mixer in. But Marcus, how are you doing?
Hey, there I am. Ken, how you doing?
Yep, we can hear you now.
The question is, can they hear me?
They can hear you. I heard you just before I took it silent, so we're good to go. This whole one-man operation is a little hard sometimes. Hopefully the lower thirds work. In fact, it looks like I am actually having some issues with something here real quick. So anyway, Marcus is an old friend of mine who has been around for a long time, and we originally, I met you through Winterhawk when we were doing the old Full Circle podcast, before they called them podcasts.
You two kind of pioneered that field.
Yeah, it was just simply internet radio as far as we were concerned, and it was a lot of fun, and you used to record a monthly bit for us to make sure that we had enough material, because sometimes we didn't. Yeah,
and that's actually what got me into radio. And,
really?
Led to my own show.
Really?
Yeah, so I owe both of you.
Well, cool. I'm actually surprised at that, because I would have expected that I thought you were doing that before we started doing this.
No, that's Hawk approached me and said, because I offered any information or services that I could help you guys out with, and she offered a spot on the show, and I'd never considered doing radio, and so I went ahead and did it, and it turned out pretty good, I guess.
Fantastic. And so you've been doing radio, well, now, let's see, let me think about this. We stopped our show 9 years ago, so you've been doing it now, what, 10 or 12 years now?
Yeah.
So...
After you stopped the show, there was a period where I wasn't doing anything, and then I had Todd Sheets from Night Watch Radio. He contacted me, and through the paranormal, groups that I associated with, and he offered me, a show. He started up a network called Jackalope and offered me a spot, and I've been there ever since.
Really? Okay, cool. I'm just testing out. It looks like Lower 30 is working now. We actually I have your name and your website up there now.
Oh, cool.
So one of the things I was promising people in the emails, and let me go ahead and get back to the two of us here, was that I was going to try and get you to talk a little bit about your time with Carlos Castaneda, because I was going through, as I was setting all this stuff up, I was going through some of the old emails you sent to me when I was doing the Which Way newsletter.
Yeah.
And you had a bunch of stories in there of your time apprenticing with Carlos, and the one that I still laugh at was when you were talking about chasing this crazy Mexican through the desert.
Yes.
What can you give us some stories? Anything.
I didn't catch that last part.
I said, can you give us a story or two?
Oh, sure. When I first met Carlos, we were in the library at UCLA, and I was doing some research on. I was majoring in parapsychology, and I was doing some research on psychotropic plants, on psilocybin mexicana mushroom. And I found a book that was up on the top shelf, and I pulled it out, and it was on that particular mushroom. And I pulled it out, and just as I got it to clear the bookshelf, another hand came up and grabbed it. And I turned around and looked, and there's this Mexican gentleman, with he had really piercing black eyes, but he was staring at me and had the biggest grin, almost like the Cheshire Cat. And, he just held it. He didn't say anything. And, I was starting to freak me out. And after about 20 seconds of that, I told him he could have the book. And, he said, thank you, Marcus. And wait. I don't know how he knew my name.
I was going to say, how did he know your name?
Yeah, and that kind of freaked me out, too. It's because I didn't know who he was. I mean, I knew who Carlos Castaneda was at the time because he had, I think he had at least one book out, maybe two, but I never had seen a picture of him. And then he introduced himself, and that kind of blew me away. But we talked probably for about 2 hours, and then he was actually in the middle of working on his thesis, for his, I believe it was his master's degree at that time. And he eventually, went on to get his doctorate. And he used his first 3 books to do that. That was his thesis. And he was in the middle of his apprenticeship, or actually towards, nearing the end of it. And he left at that time. And he went down into Mexico to meet his teacher, Don Mon. And we kind of went our separate ways. And I didn't see him again probably for, I don't know how many years it was. It was probably for another 6 years when he showed up at the place where I worked in Palm Springs, California. And at the time, we hadn't discussed anything about him teaching me or, being an apprentice or anything like that. But he showed up out of nowhere, and I kind of felt him. It was really weird. It was always, everything with Carlos was surreal and weird, but I felt him before he even walked in the shop. It's like you get that feeling someone's watching you, and he walked in and, hugged me and, asked me what I've been doing. The first thing he said to me, of course, was, "Marcos, you got fat." And I told him, yeah, I put on a few pounds since I saw him. But he said that the reason that he was messing with me back at the library at UCLA, when he grabbed a book and just wouldn't let go of it and just stared at me, he said that Spirit had indicated to him, although he never told me exactly how, he said Spirit indicated to him that I was a potential student. And so the way that works in the Toltec tradition anyway is you either trick the student to becoming an apprentice, or you just kind of do something to get their attention. And that's what he was doing. He was messing with me with the book because Spirit had pointed me out to him. And so then I got excited. I said, you mean you're going to start teaching me? Because I knew a lot of the things that he had gone through from reading the books that he had been publishing. And it was, some of the things he did were, life-threatening, or they were things that normal people don't do. And so I was a little trepidatious about doing it, but I was excited at the same time. And he, so I asked him, when do we start? Or, you're going to be teaching me the same way that you were taught? And he stopped me and he said that it's not going to start right now. It's when I move to the north. Now, I lived in Palm Springs. I actually lived in Yucca Valley near Palm Springs, but I had no intentions or ideas or anything about moving to the north. And so I didn't know what he was talking about. And then about 6 months later, something came up, and I ended up moving to North Idaho to help my mom out.
Okay.
And, and then shortly after that, within 6 months of moving, is when he first, showed up. And in fact, he showed up at I think it was a Wendy's restaurant. And I'd gone out like about 8 o'clock at night to get dinner, and I pulled up to Wendy's and I looked over, and there's this Mexican sitting in a black Corvette, and he's got this big old giant grin on his face, just staring at me. And that's when the whole apprenticeship started, and it went on for 8 years like that.
So let this be a lesson. You never know where you're going to meet your teacher.
That's right.
or under what circumstances. It could be a McDonald's or a Wendy's.
That's right. Yeah, what they say, when the student's ready, the teacher will come. Or
and when the teacher's ready,
the teacher wants a student, we'll go get it.
Well, and I find it interesting because one of the questions I'm asked all the time is, how do I find a teacher? Well, and I keep telling people, you don't. They'll show up when you're ready. When you're ready to learn what they have to teach you, they'll show up. They'll just start teaching you. And a lot of people have a hard time with that. Now, you revealed several things about your apprenticeship with Carlos in those emails, in those Which Way newsletters. You talked about one time, and we're still having problems with your video feed, and I don't know why. But I'm aware that he's that he's hesitating.
Yeah, I'm not quite as fluid as you are.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why that is. I do see my system CPU's at 93%, and I don't know why. But you revealed in those articles several things about your teachings in the Toltec shamanism and the core knowledge. Can you describe or explain what you mean by core knowledge?
Okay, probably it's best to explain that the Toltec shamanic knowledge, it started before the city of Teotihuacan was built. That was the great Toltec Empire, and it started from, according to the stories and the legends that's been passed down, because this knowledge has all been passed down by word of mouth only, never written down. And the knowledge originated from Peru, near a place, near Machu Picchu. And that's where the Olmecs is where the Toltecs, came from. They split off, and one certain group, a very large group of Olmecs, who were, shamans, or there were shamans among them, they were selected and given this knowledge. And according to the stories of the lineage, the knowledge came from the people, the sky people. So that's about all they really say, who these people, where this knowledge came from. So we can only guess what that might be. But they went on their own way, and they built, they had to split off from the main tribe because there was a lot of jealousy. There was, not a lot of trust because this group had knowledge the other group didn't have. So they split off and they went up into Mexico, and they went to Teotihuacan, and they found the city and they built it. And the city didn't get built right away. It took generations to build a city. It eventually became a city of about 200,000 people. The shamans that lived in the city, and they governed the people, they were like the rulers of the city. They possessed the knowledge that the general people, inhabitants of the city really didn't have. And they stored all that knowledge. A lot of it goes back to the original, group of, or body of knowledge that was given to them, and then has also accumulated knowledge. And the ancient Toltecs like that, they were masters of energy and power. They could work with the elementals, the forces of nature, basically. And eventually that's what destroyed the city of Teotihuacan. There was two different groups of shaman, and one group was using their abilities and powers and knowledge for personal gain, which personal gain is okay as long as it doesn't hurt anybody, but they were hurting people. And so there was in a single night, there was a large confrontation between the two groups, and it broke out, and basically what you'd call a magical battle. And it involved lightning and all kinds of different manipulations of power.
Right.
And it eventually, the city of Teotihuacan, the ruins are all stone, but there used to be wood and other buildings, and that was all destroyed in that battle in a single night. That's the part that people know. The pyramids of the sun and pyramids of the moon and all that in that area, that still stands. Outside the city is where the 200,000 people lived. But the body of knowledge, when that happened, the body of knowledge is stored. It's pretty complex, but it's stored in the stones. They didn't have a written language. And so the two ways that they preserve the knowledge is that it is stored in the stones, and archaeologists are starting to discover some of that, but the problem is it's like we store data on quartz and different crystals.
Right.
They found a way to do it in the stones. So that knowledge is in the city. It's in the Pyramid of the Sun, actually. And there are keystones that activate it, if you access it. But the other way that they stored this core knowledge is everything they know, everything about the universe, from the creator. They even explained in detail about, the god and goddess, even though they didn't refer to the god and goddess that way. About the creation and the polarities and the force that existed. But that's the type of knowledge that's stored in the stones. And then also, when the city fell, the priests broke into two different groups. There were only a couple of the good ones left. They went into the jungles and they took on a few students, and they perpetuated the knowledge by teaching them as much knowledge as they could. And not all the students got the totality of the core knowledge, but most of them, got probably about 10 to 20% of it. And they did that by altering consciousness. You can't, it's like if you tell somebody a story and they tell it to 2-3 people, it's going to be a different story. And the knowledge, is lost. But the way that a Toltec shaman teaches their student is they alter their consciousness through that thing we talked about that nobody heard the last time, called the assemblage point. And the assemblage point is an area in your actual energy field on your back. And what the assemblage point does is it focuses everything you perceive in the outside world, the way that you interact with the universe. And the Toltec shaman can manipulate that assemblage point. It's called the Nawal's blow, and they smack you right with their own personal energy or chi right in that assemblage point, and it moves your consciousness up to a level that's beyond your normal, cerebral processes in your brain. And in that altered state of consciousness, that separate reality, anything that you're taught or shown is permanently stored, and it can be recalled just like you recalled data off a computer, off the hard drive. And it's not tainted. It's not subjected to personal beliefs or opinions, emotions, anything like that. And that's how, for 500 years, 560 years or something like that, that's how the Toltec knowledge has been passed down teacher to student. And that's where Carlos came in. It was all done usually through Indians, some Mexicans, as how it's been passed down through the centuries. Carlos, met Don Juan, and he was taught the core knowledge. And he wrote about it. He's the first person to ever let the world know that this even existed, and that's why he became a best-selling author. But he never released any of the knowledge. All he did was talk about the knowledge. In fact, there were several times when he would, I would ask him, about the people that would take his books, and they try to go find a teacher. They read what he did, and they try to go in the desert and find a teacher. Or they would use his books almost like a Bible and, how to. And that would upset him because he told me on 2 different occasions that there's no damn knowledge in those books. He said it's just a representation of knowledge. And that was his job, was to let the world know that this knowledge existed.
Now, you said something about that earlier. You had told me either in those articles or otherwise that the 10 or 12 books that he wrote really are just they were out there to let people know, hey, this knowledge is there and available, but it didn't have any of the actual knowledge in it.
Yeah, and because this was a time when his first book came out in 1968. This was the big New Age movement, the hippies and all that. People were looking for something else.
Sure.
And so it was perfect timing. So Time magazine had him on the cover twice, and they dubbed him the Godfather of the New Age. And it's really that he knew what he was supposed to do, and he was not supposed to divulge any of the actual core knowledge, the how-to knowledge, because first of all, people at the time weren't ready for it. There was still a lot to learn. it's a whole different concept. Now is a different time. People have moved into different fields of study and meditation, and so we're reaching a point where it is time, to release the knowledge.
Well, it's only been 40 years. Have we progressed that far in 40 years?
Well, not really, but it's got to the point where people can accept it. It's there are concepts like the assemblage point, for example. That's one of the key factors in the Toltec shamanism. Mm-hmm. It's key in the manipulation of forces, use of magic, communication with deity. It's all hinges around the assemblage point. And if Carlos talked about the assemblage point, but getting somebody to understand it was something entirely different, because it was a different world back in the 60s and
Sure.
70s and 80s even. But now, for example, medical science has discovered the assemblage point, and there are doctors now that are basing all their research around studying the assemblage point and starting to work with it, although they haven't had too much success there. But they can tell what's going on energetically, in a person's body by, sensing the assemblage point.
Well, this is new information to me. This is new information to me. I didn't realize that they had a way of actually measuring, detecting.
Yeah. And there actually are two assemblage points. There's one that's more physical, but it's where all the meridians of the nervous system, they all flow through.
Okay.
There's also one on we have several vibrational bodies, and the next one up on the actual astral is the one that the shamans would use to manipulate that. But they've even been able to detect that with some of their equipment, because when they look at your body, they can detect certain fields of energy, electrical and magnetic energy, and they see concentration about the size of a quarter, $50 or a quarter. That's the assemblage point. And the assemblage point is, as far as our psychic abilities, it's the thing that makes the difference between a psychic and a normal person.
Okay.
Because in a psychic, someone who's naturally born psychic, the assemblage point will move. It'll move just a small amount. Sometimes it looks like a vibration or shimmer, and that shimmer it's like fine tuning a radio. It allows the person to see other realities, to see other entities that are around us. And so it's a pretty important thing. It's probably one of the most significant bodies of knowledge that Toltec shamans have that revolve around that assemblage point.
Well, and that kind of takes us into the next thing I wanted to talk about, because we talked a lot about, and of course nobody can hear us, we talked a lot about altered states or higher states, which my teaching is that when you are in meditative state, or you're when you cast circle, if it's done properly, you take that area that the circle is in, and it's now between the worlds. It's on another plane. It's on a higher plane, which is why it seems like everything outside the room is gone, because you're no longer energetically in the same physical space that you were before. And you've been doing a whole lot of work with higher state and ways to reach it, and the different higher states that are accessible. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. And you're right. It's like with casting a circle, when it's done properly, and that's the key thing there. When it's done properly, you have changed the actual space around you. And a lot of times it's not just space; it's the time, which is another dimension of space. And it takes either a great deal of skill or energy to do that. And through the manipulation of the assemblage point, casting a circle becomes much more effective. When you cast a circle, what you're doing, even though you could physically step outside the boundaries, that circle is on a magical spectrum. It's in an area where basically where magic happens. It's more on the astral and the energetic planes. And when you cast that circle, there's if it's done properly, there's nothing that's going to get through. And it's because you've changed the fabric of that particular space. It's called paramagnetism, and it's where the atoms and actually electrons are spinning a certain direction. If you can make everything spin the same direction, though it's usually haphazard, but if you make everything spin the same direction, it becomes an impenetrable barrier, and you go to any outside energy. So that's basically what happens with circle casting. But with altered states, the way you start manipulating the assemblage point, without anyone else's help, is through raising your state of vibrational energy. And there's a lot of ways to do that. There's different yoga meditations and things like that, but that takes years to actually master anything to the point where you can do things. And it's not just doing something, it's also communicating with spirit or communicating with deity. When you reach these higher states, you've opened up a conduit to these other entities. And you allow them to communicate, and in some cases you allow them to actually enter your space. And, like we do in rituals. But the techniques take a long time to learn, as far as, if you do anything like the Hindu do, or like the shamans, it can take years to actually learn it. But I have been working with the Monroe Institute, who is one of the leading research centers in the world on human consciousness. And I've been applying a lot of the Toltec techniques that I've been taught, along with the audio technology that the Monroe Institute uses, called hemisync. And that's where you change vibrations, different frequencies of sound. You put it in one ear and then a different frequency in another ear, and it creates a ghost frequency or a beat frequency inside your nervous system. And it actually changes your awareness or your state of being. And through that, they've done incredible things at the Monroe Institute, for the last 30 years. But I wanted to manipulate the assemblage point. I wanted to, find ways to alter consciousness to the point where you can do a lot of the things that, in a matter of weeks, it takes shamans years to master. And I had a lot of success with hemisync. And then I started doing some experimenting, over the last year. And I developed a new audio technology that I think is better suited for the Toltec tradition and Toltec knowledge. And I call that, I'm going to make that available very soon. I'm going to introduce it and let a lot of it go free to the public, whoever wants to experiment with it, or it's mainly for meditation and altering your consciousness. I call it Psygenesis. And that's something that I haven't released yet. I've been experimenting with it for over a year, but I can't actually release it to the public. I was going to do it a couple months ago, but my attorney said, no, you can't do that, because if you release it to the public, it becomes public domain and people can do whatever they want with it. And so I have to go through the paperwork and get all the patent applied for, or it's applied for to get the patent.
Right.
protection on it, and then I have control over it. And somebody's not going to be taking it and trying
Calling
to
it
make
their
money
own.
off of it.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you right now, I certainly would be interested in getting my hands on some of that, as well as some information on how it can be used in a spiritual manner. Because I think that it's interesting. In the chat, Phoenix is talking about how they think that core knowledge is needed now because we've become separated from ourselves.
Yes.
And that people have a difficult time relating to each other and also relating to themselves. One of the things I've been working on trying to teach my second year students is to go and work with their dark, do some shadow work and work with their dark side of themselves. And that's something that isn't really done a whole lot anymore. And I suspect that that's something that you have to kind of do if you're going to be doing, if you're going to be traveling. I don't know if it's appropriate to say among the spheres or not.
Yeah, a lot of the fluff bunny type pagans. It's not to say that that's bad. To say that you can't do any dark work or experiment with the dark side. You can't have the light side without the dark side. It's all part of a cycle.
Right, and I look at it as if you're not using the dark side, you're only using half your potential.
That's right. Yeah, you can't really. You're spinning your wheels if you're not using both sides of the spectrum.
Right.
And it doesn't mean you have to go out and hurt people. I mean, there's a lot of misconceptions about that.
Right.
But your spirit, your the thing we call a soul, if you cut off part of it, it's not going to function properly. And so you're right. It's something you do have to connect with. And it's one of the biggest problems now, like Phoenix was saying, it's the core knowledge is needed now, and that's correct, and that's why Carlos brought me into it all those years ago, because it is time for a lot of that to come out. But one of the biggest problems that I see in the world today is people have lost their center. They're no longer connected to the earth. And a lot of that is physical. People wear shoes all day long. Some of my pagan friends, are more connected because they go out and, walk barefoot in the sand or earth or grass. And that's important. People don't realize how important that is. There are people in some of the bigger cities that never touch the earth. And we are part of the earth. Our bodies, our physical bodies, and our energetic bodies cycle in there. They function with the same frequency of the earth, which is about 7 cycles per second, which is, the alpha range of consciousness. And that resonance is created, it's an electrical resonance. It's in the earth, and it's created between the ionosphere and the earth with all, lightning strikes, and that's what actually set the whole thing up. Mm-hmm. But and it actually has a name. Scientists know it as the Shaman resonance, and it's approximately 7 cycles per second. That's the frequency that our energies flow. But when you become disconnected with the earth, when you're no longer touching it, we isolate ourselves, not just emotionally and through society. We isolate ourselves from the planet itself, and when that happens, you start seeing that's what shamans call where you've lost your center. Mm-hmm. It's not just, it's spiritual and physical, but you've lost your center and connection to the earth. You've got to be grounded to the earth, and that's the only thing that corrects it. What'll happen is you'll lose control of your energy. You can have a lot of emotional problems. You can start developing, we see a lot of problems in the world today that was very rare in the past, ADHD and different, there's other, it can be mental disorders, A lot of the probably one of the biggest I've seen is anxiety.
Hmm.
People, have major anxiety problems, and a lot of times it's as simple as taking your shoes off and going to a tree, putting your back to it, and planting your feet in the ground, and just feel the tree. Let the tree's energy flow through you.
And it's interesting because I agree 100% with you. It's one of those things where, as witches, we teach very early on about grounding and how the importance of grounding. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody explain it quite so fully as you just did. In that, if you're not grounded, it causes, or it can cause, all sorts of problems that that most people don't think about. And the fact that just taking some time and physically connecting with the earth. Next month here, in less than a month, I'm going up to Dragonfest. Last year was the first time I'd been to Dragonfest in 5 years, and it was amazing how fulfilling that was. I mean, aside from the fact that everybody's saying, "Hey, Greyheart, it's great to see you," I used to use Dragonfest as my yearly battery recharge. Even when I was working as staff or was on the board, I used it as my battery recharge for the year, because it was up in the mountains. I was with like-minded people. And I tended to wear, during the day, I'd just wear the sarong and some sandals, because that's all you needed. And it was amazing how, coming back down to town, I felt relaxed. I felt back in control. Back, back. I felt whole. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize, is that you have to spend some time out in nature and as close to nature as possible, so that you can again reconnect and feel it.
Yeah, and that's true. And that's when I used to hear you and Hawk talk about Dragonfest, and the things those are some of my favorite shows. I was so envious. And that one time when I was trying to get there, and then something came up and I couldn't. That's depressed me ever since.
It's probably best you didn't, because that was back in the days of the 1,000 person festivals, and it was more of a party than a spiritual event. Now it's much more of a spiritual event, because we've gotten back down to 150, 200 people, and we all know why we're there, which was one of the problems. When it was 1,000 people, most of the people there didn't realize why we were there. They thought we were up there to party for a week.
Yeah, that does make a major difference. But you're right that it's events like that, getting away from your everyday life, that really set things into balance and give you different perspective and reground you.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I really appreciate was the fact that. It was when we were up there, as staff, we would spend a couple of days beforehand acclimatizing, getting the city out of us. And then we would come back the Monday after. We would spend Monday going through and cleaning up. And some of those years were incredible. For a bunch of people who are supposed to be earth-based, you would be amazed at the amount of trash we would find. But again, it was 1,000 people, and most of them seemed to be there for the party, not for the spirituality. So it really shouldn't have surprised me.
Yeah.
But going up and getting away from the crowd, away from the concrete, and back into nature, I think that's a hugely important thing. Let's see,
Yeah.
I'm looking here at the chat. Let's see, Phoenix says fear is a powerful motivator. I think that there are so many people that fear being separated from the rest of humanity without ever realizing they become more connected by doing that. And I agree 100%. You know, the other thing that I noticed with that, you know, with the 1,000 person, with the 1,000 person festival, was that when you would go around at night, I have this tendency to walk around at night without a light because I don't need it. I have a flashlight with me. I have a very bright flashlight with me, you know, but I don't usually use it except in the porta potties where you actually do need to see what you're doing. And you know, and so I'm walking around at night. There are no, you know, unlike the city, there's no street lights. What you've got to work with is stars and the moon. And if it's a nearly full moon, that can be really, really bright. But what I noticed was, with 1,000 people up there, everybody seemed to walk around with their portable suns. And by some portable sun, I mean the Coleman lantern, the big one that throws out, you know, a billion lumens. And the problem with that was that, you know, they're blowing my night vision because they can't seem to see. And when I asked them about it, they're like, well, I can't see in the dark. Have you tried? Well, no, you know, and I think a lot of them were afraid of the dark. I think they were afraid.
You're right.
Yeah, I think they were afraid to walk around without the protection of this portable sun. And I think it is a metaphor for them and where they are at in their personal journey. They can't, you know, when I talk to people who are new to this path and I talk about the dark side, and they kind of give me this look of a mixture of fear and other things, and I think that's because of baggage that you know, we all bring with us to this path from the path we started on. We all have that baggage, but when you take a little bit of time and you start to look around and you start to realize that most of what you learned is not necessarily correct. I won't say it's wrong, but it's not necessarily correct. And you start to take a new look at your life and what you want in it and how you want it to be, things like that. Then all of a sudden you start to realize, you know, maybe a lot of this stuff I need to look at again, because it's not working for me, but it's working for this guy over here. What's he got that I don't? What's he doing that I don't know? What does he know that I don't know? And a lot of that, I think, is you know, time, the amount of time that you've been following a particular path, how closely you pay attention to signs. I mean, there are signs all over the place. You know this. There are signs all over the place. But I think that most people are not paying attention. They're coasting through life. You know, you know, these are the people who I work with who you know, they don't get any work done. As long as they show up, they expect to be paid. And this is not a path for that kind of person. At least you won't last very long or learn very much if that's who you are and that's who you expect to stay. Yeah, Phoenix is saying it still amazes that number of people who can't make their way through the semi-dark, and it's true. We expect light. You know, I heard I was watching TV, and I want to say it was like, you know, Science Channel or something like that, and they were talking about a power outage in LA. And power went out, and it got dark, and all of a sudden 911 got flooded by calls. And it was all these people calling up because of these lights in the sky, and they're sitting there going, what are they're looking out, they sent people outside to look around, and what lights are you talking about? It turned out to be the stars.
Yeah.
They had never seen stars.
Yeah.
And that doesn't surprise me. You know, LA is a brightly lit metroplex. You probably have never seen a star before in your life. And it scared them because they didn't know what it was.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I'm the same way you are when it comes to the dark. It's you know, I live right on the edge of the forest, and a lot of times I'll go into the forest even when the moon's not out. And when you have to, you know, scare the darkness away with light, you're missing so much. The darkness it's got a special quality, a velvet softness to it. And once you become accustomed to it, it's not just your eyes, it's your entire body. When it becomes accustomed to the darkness, that's when you start, opening up to other things that are out there. That's kind of like a separate reality where you start altering your consciousness, and people tend to be afraid of the dark.
Well, it's interesting because I would tell people at the old site where we're at, it was next to a lake, so it was an open area, and so the road that followed around the lake tended not to have a whole lot of trees between it and the lake. They were all on the far side of the road, and so you'd get a bright moon out there, and I'd be walking around late at night, no lights, and the road would literally glow. And I tell people, yeah, the road glows at night, and they're like, "You're crazy! It does not. There's nothing in here that would cause it to glow." It's like, yeah, just trust me on this. Yeah, it's the reflection of the moonlight. I understand what's happening, but when you see it, it's magical. It's literally magical because you don't expect it.
That's right. And there are entities, spiritual elementals, things like that that live, they dwell in the darkness because their energies work better there.
Right.
And you're going to miss all that if you're carrying a flashlight or you're taking the darkness away.
Right, absolutely. And one of the things I like about the new site is I guess the actual overall acreage is much bigger, but because it's a smaller festival, we tend to camp closer together, and so it seems like distances aren't quite that far. And so people don't seem to need that, and I think that most of the partiers went away and haven't come back, and so because it's not the lake. Oh my God, it's not the lake. So we can't do this, and so they went away and never came back. And so people who were left were the people who really understood what Dragon Fest was about, and so there's a lot less light. You'll see people with flashlights and things like that, but not the portable suns like there used to be. And you do see a whole lot more off in the distance, and behind the bushes, and it is a much more peaceful and spiritual time up there now. And so I'm really looking forward to going because I've got most of my camp mates of our set. We know who we're camping with. We have no idea where we're camping, but it doesn't matter. We'll figure something out. It's what we did last year. And we'll get up there early and be able to pick out a nice spot before everybody gets there, and guard it with our lives so that we're not crowded, so we don't have people camping on top of us. But it's the idea of going out and reconnecting is something that is so foreign to most people in our modern society. If they leave the city, they don't know. They don't know what to expect. It's just completely foreign to them.
Yeah, and people that I get a lot of people that want me to teach them, and it's not the way it works. But if I teach,
please teach me.
I have given different lectures and things like that before, and one of the first things I teach them is how to do exactly what you say. The first step is to connect to the earth. And then, you can start moving, but you're blind until you can do that. And if you do have to go into the darkness and you have to have light, it's better to use fire. Use a candle or use a, fire from a campfire. And the reason is your incandescent, all the artificial light we have will not penetrate the barriers of the veil, the thing that separates our two worlds. Candlelight will. Flames will penetrate because of the frequency that they burn at.
You mean natural light?
Yeah, the natural light like we have with lights, incandescent, neon, LED, those things won't penetrate the veil.
Right, but natural light like fire, candles, sunlight doesn't penetrate, it just blows it away.
Yes. Sunlight kind of blows it out of the water, but candles and fire, any type of flame will actually penetrate the veil. Spirits or entities on the other side can see that.
Right, and they're drawn to it. Some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you talk about the veil. When witches talk about the veil, usually they're talking about Samhain, and they're talking about the veil between this life and the next. Can you give us a little more information on what you call the veil? Is it the same thing, or is it different?
The veil is where the astral world. It's actually a little more complex, but let's just say the astral world, where entities go, and the physical world meet, and where they meet, the frequencies of vibration are so different. They clash. It's like trying to put your hand through a spinning bicycle wheel. Usually, just you hit a solid wall, nothing happens, and it's because of the differences in frequency. But the energies from the physical world, they go up to that certain level of vibration, then it rolls back on itself and comes back. And the same thing happens on the other side. And it creates an area, like a pass me not area, that we call the veil. And the veil has dimensions. They talk about it getting thinner, and it probably does at a certain point. But when, like on Samhain, when it's said that the veil is growing thinner, communication can take place easier. Beings can cross the veil easier. It's not so much that the veil's getting thinner, and this is what I've witnessed personally. I mean, this was one of my lessons. I was taken to the edge of the veil by Carlos. And what happens is that there's a turbulence, like rapid running water. You can't see the bottom of the stream. And still standing water, you can see all the way to the bottom. Mm-hmm. During most of the year, especially during the daytime, due to cosmic radiation from the sun, the veil is real turbulent. It's like white water. Mm-hmm. But as the sun goes down and goes far enough down over the horizon, the veil starts to calm out. That energy starts to calm out because the cosmic radiation isn't agitating it. And that's why we have more interaction with spirits during the night, especially at the lowest point, which is midnight to 3 a.m., is when the veil actually is the calmest. Now, on days like Samhain, due to solar radiation and due to magnetic positioning, certain times of the year, like Samhain, the veil gets real calm. And it's not necessarily that it's thinner, it's that energy can be transmitted back and forth much easier. Communication with the dead or other entities, and they eat to the point where they can actually push into our world. And it's because you don't have all that turbulence, all that white water type effect.
Right. It's because it's a calmer, glassy kind of straight. It's easier to push through. Whereas if it were turbulent and moving, you would have that force of the movement to fight against also.
Yeah. Yeah, and another thing, what I'm thinking about it, when we cast a circle, when it's done properly, the veil is so calm and so translucent that you can almost step right through it.
Right. Having done a lot of Samhain rituals, and having been at good ones and some bad ones, I have noticed that that time of year, and it's interesting talking to my Celtic friends. They talk about the same thing happening at Beltane, because it's directly across the year from Samhain. And once they mention that, it's like, oh, you're right. It's a similar but different feeling. I can't say that it's opposite, but it's a similar but different feeling, and that makes a lot of sense too, because for those who celebrated Beltane and conceived on Beltane, those children were always considered to be special. They were considered children of the gods. Well, very well could have been if spirits or entities were pushing back through the veil. Very well could be.
Yeah, and that's very true. Beltane and Samhain both are points where the veil becomes very translucent like that. They're very energetic magically. that of course is your birthday, Beltane.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I wasn't conceived on that day. I was born on that day.
That's true.
And just before, not too much before sunset, in fact.
Really?
I was born at 5:45 p.m. So sunset would have been 6 to 7, somewhere around in there. Yeah. Yeah, which reminds me, there was one of the first articles that you wrote about Carlos. You talked about how you and he headed out across the desert to find a particular mountain before sunrise.
Oh, yeah.
You want to tell that story real quick?
Yeah, and that's one of the, before I tell you about that, that's one of the articles that I want to do for you is on not just that event, but it's on the principles. It's I haven't completed it yet, but it's, I think I'm going to call it the power of nudity or something like that, because there is a tremendous power in it, and there are reasons for it, scientific reasons too. But
because clothing really is armor.
A lot of the core knowledge I want to release through you, whatever medium we choose. But a lot of the stuff that's never been heard before, because there's 30 million people that listen to or are fans of Carlos to this day, and a lot of the core knowledge they're looking for. So that's some of it. But on that particular day, we had to reach this. It was a lesson of power, and we had to reach this mountaintop in Mexico. And we had to get there before the sunset, because that's very energetic and powerful times at sunrise and sunset. And so we were almost running up the mountainside, and I'm just thinking, here I am running with a crazy Mexican through the desert again. And he's dragging me up the hill, and we got up to the top, and he says he's going to teach me about energy and about power. And I said, okay, now what? And he says, take your clothes off. And I'm going, you want me to get naked? And he said, yeah, hurry, the sun's going down. And
don't dawdle, man, take your clothes off.
That's exactly it. So I took my shirt off. I got down to my underpants, and he said, no, take it all off. You got it. That's especially important. So I'm thinking, is this perverted Mexican or what? But so I'm in the middle of nowhere on top of a mountain naked with this guy. And
he's fully clothed, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. He's clothed.
Yeah.
And he's played a lot of practical jokes on me too, so I didn't know if this was one of them.
Right.
And so I did that, and I sat down on a rock, and he said, Marcos, he says, I wouldn't do that if I were you. And I asked him why, and he said, there's a rattlesnake right beside you. And so I jumped up real quick, and anyway, the lesson was I had to face the sun as it was going down, and on the last rays, just when the sun just disappears, you have to squint your eyes, and you take it in by moving your head back and forth. And it's like when that happened, it was like a surge of power. It's hard to explain. And afterwards, I asked him, why did I have to be naked? And he's joking around. He says, you didn't. But then he went, after he was done laughing, he explained to me that the actual fabric that we put on our clothes almost short circuits our connection with the elements, and especially if it's artificial clothes. Mm-hmm. And he says it doesn't mean that you can't take energy in or you can't do magic, but it's not only psychological, but it's energetic on the planet. As far as taking in energy with every cell of your body. And if you're covering up any certain part of it, you're not taking any energy in.
Right.
And
it's one more barrier that the energy has to go through.
Totally closed.
Yeah.
it wasn't the same.
Yeah, it's one more barrier that the energy has to go through to get to you, and that makes perfect sense. And it's interesting because when I first started this path, years ago, it was normal that ritual done in coven, at least, was done skyclad. And that was normal and accepted, and that's just the way it was. Because, most of those covens were Gardnerian, and we all know Gardner liked to look at naked bodies. So but there is, and he understood this. There is a difference when you are when you are there with only what you were, with the tools that you were born with. You are. Part of that feeling that you experience isn't embarrassment. It's the fact that you are now fully open to the energies around you, and you are feeling them more than you would normally because you have your entire body to receive them. And I understand that, but it's funny because people talk about out in mainstream society. They talk about the dreams where you're walking around in your underwear or you're naked or whatever, and you're just so embarrassed. Oh my God! And I've noticed that my dreams, I'll be walking around naked and it doesn't bother me. My biggest concern is, well, this is inappropriate.
Yeah, exactly, and it's. There's a strong psychological side to it too, because once you're no longer inhibited, once you're not afraid of other people seeing you or afraid of any defects you may have in your body, once you get over that it depends on the person how long that takes. You drop shields, psychological shields, and you open, and basically what you said, you open yourself up to the universe. We have our clothes we wear as a shield, as a protection or a psychological shield, and it kind of cripples us energetically. And so I'm not recommending everybody get naked and run around, but on certain circumstances, that's you've got to shed that clothes to connect with the universe. But you also have to get over the, any inhibitions you have too, or it's just going to counteract it.
Yeah, there's an old joke about Dragonfest that, the first people you see naked are the ones you least want to see. But, but again, they are the ones who are least inhibited, and therefore they're going to tend to have access to these energies that, we're all going up there to experience. And I think that's one of the things that draws us all back is that, we've, at least sometime when we first started going, we did experience these energies, and we go back because we want to experience it again. And I know for me, a lot of it started out with the drum frenzies. I was fortunate enough to camp next to a drummer. And he, and I've been drumming at that time I'd been drumming for, I don't know, a couple of decades. And he says, "Hey, you want to go?" I said, "Drums? Sure, let's go." So I learned, and it turns out that people who were running Dragonfest that year was at their camp. So, I got to meet a whole lot of people who were in charge of Dragonfest. I got to drum all night long and watch naked women and people dancing around the fire. I was completely happy. And but I've also had just as spiritual of experiences. I can remember one year I and another guy were hiking up to a place we call Far Point up at the lake, and it was basically the highest camp. Actually, it was the highest pre-made campsite up there, and we didn't allow cars up there. We didn't allow people to camp up in that area. It was up in what we were calling sacred space. And we got up there, and as we're coming up into the entrance of this particular campsite, he puts his hand out and says, "Hold on, stop." And real quiet, he says, "Just stop." And like, "What?" And he points, and I look over, and there's a doe, and she's just kind of standing there looking at us, and she couldn't have been 5 feet away. All right, that's unheard of. And she looked at us, and we looked at her, and we both kind of dropped down to our knee, and so that she knew that we weren't going to harm her. And, she kind of looked at us, and then she loped off through the woods, and, we're like, wow, that was cool. That was cool. And things like that do tend to happen and this was actually before Dragonfest had started. It was the day before or 2 days before Dragonfest was supposed to start. But because it's held at the same time every year, it's and because we as witches we don't end a circle, we simply cut it and leave it. The energies are there the whole time. And so, I having been up there, 15 years or more in the same spot, I have no doubt that that energy attracts all sorts of beings, whether they are animal or other. And so, this new, I think that's part of the reason this new place feels so different, is that we don't have those built-up energies. We've only been there, this will be year number 7.
It will take time.
It takes time.
And what you're talking about, that built-up energy, that's called paramagnetic resonance. And it happens over time. Whenever you do anything with human intention, including magic or ritual, you change the area around you. You polarize it. It's like how a piece of metal becomes magnetized, but it's in the electron spins, and over time, depending on the person and the energy, it'll build up and build up. And once it's built up, unless you do something to counteract it, it's there. It's there forever. And that's the basis for what people talk about when they say residual hauntings. It's like a haunting, or something that takes place over a certain period of time, year after year, when there's no intelligence behind it. It's a paramagnetic resonance that's in a form of phase lock loop. So it's like when you loop a video, it just goes over and over when conditions get right. And that's the same thing that happens with that energy on sacred spots.
Well, and the other thing that I just realized and remembered was the fact that same site up at the lake was used by a Native American group, because we would go for a walk and we would see the wood stacked up that they had cut down at the end of their festival the prior year, so that it would I can't think of the word I'm trying to think of, but so it would be ready for this year's festival, and I don't know how many years they've been going up there. So between the two groups, I have absolutely no doubt that there was a whole lot of energy built up there. Where we're at now is private land. It's owned by a couple, and they've been gracious enough to allow us to come up there and camp once a year, and they're they're on the path, so that they know what we're doing and they have no problems with it. They understand that we're not hurting anybody, and they come down and join us, and we have a wonderful time, and we try and take care of their property as though it were ours. So when we leave, we police the area, and again, we have all this wonderful energy. My only regret is that that first year that we were there, it was my last year up there for 5 years. It was the last year that Serpent Circle was together as a coven, and the last time they were up there as a group. And because it was the first year at this site, I can remember I want to say it was like Thursday night. It was not one of the big nights, and so I'd gone to my tent and gone to bed early. Well, all of a sudden I hear chanting. It's like, serpents are up. So I get dressed and I head over there, and we spent the entire night. I mean, the sun came up before we stopped chanting, and that was something that I really do regret will probably never happen again, is the opportunity, because I chanted with these guys. They went to Dragonfest every year for over 20 years. And I won't have the opportunity, more than likely, to ever chant with these people again. And they wrote their own chants, so it's not like I'm going to catch these chants done by somebody else, because no one else can remember their chants. They cast enchantments over them, so that unless you're with the serpents, you can't remember the serpents' chants. And unfortunately, those chants may be lost to us for good. If I get the chance to try and find a way of recording them, I will. I don't know that can happen either, but I'm going to try, because they were some wonderful chants. They were fantastic, very spiritual, very very lively, full of energy, full of life, and it's so unusual at this point to find anybody who does that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard one that I think you recorded. I'm not sure. What's it called? What's it called?
Well, there was a recording that was done by a group called Parnassus, who was at Dragonfest one year, and they were out there chanting with the serpents, and they really liked this song, and I know which one you're thinking of. I just can't think of the title of it, and they did an okay job of it. It wasn't, and I know I'm jaded because, I used to go up there with the serpents and chant with them, and I chanted with these guys for, over 20 years, and even the fact that I had been up there, and chanted, and I've been doing this for over 20 years, there is only one chant I can remember the words to, and I can't remember all the words to it, and, it's certainly not one of the, from my point of view, it's not one of the best chants that they ever did. It's a really, it's a great chant for the first third of the year where you're doing fertility rites. But the one chant that I know that everybody out there who has ever heard the serpents has always wanted to, they always request them to do it, is a chant they call Bubbles. And this is a particularly complex chant that goes on. Each stanza is probably a minute, 2 minutes long, and then they've got, I don't know, 4 or 5 stanzas, and then they repeat from the beginning. And so this chant can go on for 10, 15, 20 minutes, and nobody gets tired of it because it is that well written. It's it's very full of imagery. You can see the cauldron and the bubbles coming up out of the cauldron, and this witch standing behind the cauldron, grabbing the bubble and stringing it on a thread, because that's part of the lyrics of this particular chant. You can actually see the person doing it, and this necklace of bubbles that have come from this cauldron, this bubbling cauldron, and it really is a fascinating song. It's more than a chant. It is a song. It's one of those songs. It's one of those things that I think, in the right genre, could be one of those number one hits on the radio. I honestly think that it really does have that potential, and everybody who's ever heard it agrees, because they always want the serpents to do that particular chant, and the serpents like, oh, again.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a shame that they don't record it, because that's, you'll have to be there, I guess, in order to experience it.
And that is part of the experience, is the fact that you have to be there. And and I talk about the serpents quite a lot in my writing and to my students, because my students will never meet most of these people. They may meet one or two of them, but they won't meet them as a group ever again. Yeah. And I have to be honest, my friendship with the serpents, it was a very formative part of my path, because they were kind enough to invite me up to their Saturday night rituals every year, and their after ritual celebrations, not orgies, after ritual celebrations. And we always had a wonderful time up there. And it's interesting, because over the years, I remember when I first started going to Dragonfest, the serpents were this fringe group. They were this group of young kids doing all these unspeakable things. And by the time we moved to the new site, they were the mainstream of our community. I mean, it wasn't that they were out a whole lot. It was simply that everybody knew about them, and they all knew what to expect, and it was no longer shocking. They were an accepted and requested part of our community, and so I find it interesting how that changes over time.
Yeah, that's definitely something I wish I could experience. It's in this area, there's not much going on like that. Now, Dragonfest is still open to the public, isn't it?
Yeah, if you buy a ticket. And I think that they, at least the last several years, and probably this year, they're selling tickets at the gate. So if you were to show up at the gate on Wednesday, you could probably get yourself in.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now, you have to make sure and bring your camp gear, but yeah. And if at the main gate you ask for me, they'll figure a way to get a hold of me. I'll come down and meet you.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to come. I'm not sure if I can do it this year. I'll have to check my calendar and stuff. But what are the dates on that again?
3rd through 5th, I believe. Let me check my calendar, which is right here. There we go. All right, so we're in July. There's August. Yeah, so Wednesday the 3rd through through the 7th. So it's Sunday the 7th are the official dates.
All right, I'll see what I can do. If I can't make it this year, I will definitely be there next year. So you better go next year.
Oh, I plan to. I had, like I said, I had so much fun last year that, and it helps having a group to camp with because I don't have to take everything else, everything up myself and rely strictly on myself. And I did that for many years. But having a group to camp with it takes the stress out of the camp experience because we all take a little bit of food, we all take turns cooking and cleaning, and so you actually have some time to sit back and enjoy, and I think that helps make the experience a lot more pleasurable. And see if you can talk your daughter into coming. She used to live here, and I still didn't meet her.
I know. I can't believe that.
Because Dragonfest is a much smaller, much more intimate gathering than it used to be, than it was when it was 1,000 people. It has regained a lot of the spirituality that it lost when it was just a party. And it really does help that the people who are there that are taking part are the ones who understand this is why we're here, this is what we're doing. It's sure, we're gonna have fun, we're gonna have a lot of fun. Yes, there's a party element to it, but that's not why we're here. We're here to commune with nature and to get back in touch with ourselves and our community and the spirits around us. And I find that we do that very well with a much smaller group because everybody understands that.
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. You get a lot more out of things and people connect more. It's like being in the city when you get a big giant group.
Well, and I don't know that a large group is necessarily a prohibition for it. I think that as long as everybody there understands why you're there, it can be done because the one that's held at Camp Gaia over Memorial Weekend, and I can't think of the name of it, in Kansas. It's one I've wanted to go to for over 20 years, and I've never made it. But I understand they've got a large group of people there, maybe 1,000 people. But because they're all people who are there because they understand why they're there. They're all there for the same reason, and so it tends to be a much more spiritual event. The problem with Dragonfest is that somebody from a college, it was a college-age kid from the East Coast, went there, and they went there for the right reasons. My understanding is, but they got on this newfangled thing at the time called the internet, and told all of their college buddies around the country, "Hey, you've got to go to this place. It's a fantastic party," and that's what they did. And so for a good 10 years or more, it became nothing more than a frat party up in the mountains.
Yeah, I think I definitely am going to have to. I know Nicole wants to go too, but I'm going to have to get something. She wouldn't be able to make it this year, but she would next year. And she follows. She works a lot in her practice with the Egyptian deities.
Really?
Yeah, that's what she's always been drawn to that. You walk in her house and it's full of Egyptian statues and paintings but
I got a book on that, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I'll get her. I can get her a signed copy. I know the author.
Do you? Yeah, I don't think I did tell her about it, but I don't think she got a copy yet. So I'll have her get in touch with you and arrange to get one from you and get you to sign it.
Yeah, I've got a copy I can get to her. Absolutely.
But yeah, I think she'd have a blast out there too. And she hasn't. We've been on several paranormal investigations, together, and stuff always happens around her because she has physical medium tendencies. So entities take her energy and use it. She also gets hurt a lot, but she's always wanted to go to that type of event. But it's in this part of the Northwest, it's just not as, I know they're out there, but they're not like they are back east or in Colorado.
Well,
it's a major difference.
yeah, and we used to get people from the West Coast who were like, we come here every year because it's a lot more interesting, a lot more fun. It's it's a lot more, and that's a good thing. But I think that my thing is that I think that everybody has some community around them. It's a matter of whether or not they know that the community is there. And it could be a very small community. That could be a good thing. That could be could be an excellent thing, because if it's a smaller community, hopefully it means that you'll get along better with each other. That's not necessarily the case, but hopefully. And you and I were talking before the show tonight about how down in the South, because I wear my jewelry and my ring and all that, witches come up to me and ask me if I'm a witch, and then they say, I'm the only one for 1,000 miles, just in time for someone else to come up and say, hey, are you a witch? Yeah, I'm a witch. Where are you from? I'm from just down the road. Really? Well, they're from right down the road the other side. Maybe you guys should talk.
Yeah, and that's something that really needs to be done, because there's a lot more of us out there than people would even begin to imagine.
Well, and I'm hoping that eventually that this will become part of that, is a way for people to come in and gather, because we have this live, we have the interaction with the audience. Phoenix is the only one who's been posting anything, but in the chat. But we have that ability, and I'm hopeful that people will start to come in and watch and listen and partake on the live show, not just the recorded that goes out after, because the opportunity is there to meet people, and that you can't when you're just watching a video by yourself.
Yeah, that's definitely true. You can, I know, I've been in other interviews, like I was telling you earlier, more in the paranormal side, because that's in the internet, that's more what I'm known for.
Right.
But because I built all kinds of equipment to communicate back and forth. But in other groups or interviews I've been on, I know a lot of people that have met and didn't even know that they lived down the street from each other.
Right.
And friendships were forged, and it's worked out pretty good for a few people that I know.
Right.
So it really needs to be some type of community.
Right.
Just so pagans can connect and share knowledge and work together.
And local and regional, state, national. I think community is the big thing to try and create, is so that people feel like they're part of something bigger than just themselves. I know a lot of people out there, they're happy, they're quite happy being solitary, but there are others who like, well, I really wish there were other people around. Not necessarily people, not necessarily to practice with all the time, but at least somebody I can talk to. I can't talk to my friends and family because they think I'm crazy, but somebody who understands what's going on, somebody who I could talk to when I see something or when I experience something, would be really nice. And and Phoenix says he goes back to that lack of connection thing, and I think that's correct. I think that we have gotten to the point where, and you're out there in Idaho. You probably understand this. I have family in extreme eastern Kansas, and I've been going out there since I was a kid, out on the farm. And it's a completely different world out there, because you're in the city. We are so packed in close together that we are afraid of interfering with our neighbor. We're worried about paying too close attention because we don't want to be, it's none of our business. And out in the country, where your nearest neighbor may be a mile away, it doesn't feel that way. Everybody knows everybody. You're driving down the road. It's a dirt road. You're bumping down this dirt road. Car comes up the other opposite direction. They stick their hand out the window. And they're waving at you. They have no idea who you are, but they're waving at you because that's what everybody does. And that's that sense of community that I think we're missing. And we get some of that at festivals like Dragon Fest, but I'd like to see that happen on a more frequent basis, because I think that if we can get to that point, we used to be a lot more like that. But and that was long before the internet came along. It was people just in your local community, very friendly and accepting, and and I've been accused of not being accepting, and I'm sure some of those people are watching now, and that's true. I mean, I believe certain things should be done certain ways. That doesn't mean I'm not accepting. It means that I have an opinion. But do you realize we have gone a half an hour over our allotted time?
Uh-oh.
We're out here, and it's like, wow, I'm just talking, having a good time. It's like, holy crap, it's 8:30. We should have stopped this half an hour ago.
Yeah, we should do this every week.
Well, I'm threatening to do that. I don't know. Would you be willing to do it every week? I don't think anybody wants to hear me talk for an hour every week. But if I can find a co-host, I'm looking for a co-host, preferably someone who is less knowledgeable, so that somebody who the people watching can relate to, somebody who's new, relatively new, and can ask the questions. I think that would be a format that would work pretty well.
Yeah, it probably would.
So we'll see what happens. I'm threatening. Well, probably if it happens, it'll probably happen in the fall or the winter. It's summer. Everybody's got things to do.
That's true.
My sister came into town today, and she called me up, and she had gotten a hold of me a couple of weeks ago and said, I'm going to be in town on the 13th. What, you want to get together? I said, well, I can't on the 13th. I'm busy. But the next day I'm free. So she called me up today and said, we're going to town. What, you going to be available tomorrow? Yeah, I'll be available. I think it's been probably 3-4 years since I've seen my sister, because she lives out in Vegas. So summer tends to be busy for people. They sun's up late, and so they've got things to do. And I'm thinking that I suspect that as the weather cools off, the sun goes down earlier, it gets dark earlier. They'll be afraid to go out in the dark, so they'll be in their house, and maybe we'll get a bigger live audience.
Well, I've noticed that with my show, the Shaman's Brew. I haven't done a new show in a while. I've been playing archives because there are things happening with the way that I'm supposed to release information, and I'm just about to release new shows. And so, but I've noticed with my show during the summer, the numbers are lower. I'm hooked up to a fairly large network, so I can get as many as 40,000 people that listen to the show. But during the summer months, that drops really low, and I never really understood why. But what you're saying makes sense. People are busy and stuff in the wintertime, especially around the festivals, Samhain, and all the way into spring. My numbers just skyrocket.
Yeah, I have noticed that for years, that things that go on all the time, and all of a sudden it starts getting warmer around April, May. People stop showing up, and they don't come around as often. It's like, what's going on? Usually, well, in my meetup, for example, this last one, we actually had a fairly good group. We probably had 15, 20 people show up, but we've had several nights where it's been just maybe 8 or 10 of us, and that's unusual. But it's summer. after this month, starting actually after next month, starting September, October, as the light gets weaker, I fully expect that people will show up more regularly because they don't feel like going out and doing stuff. The light's not out late enough for them to do stuff. It's not warm enough for them to go out and do feel comfortable. And that's a cycle I have noticed. Me and my witch self have noticed quite a lot, is that as the weather gets warmer, people tend to give up their regular stuff to go out and do stuff with other things.
Yeah.
Well, shall we call this a show?
I think so. I think we've gone way over.
Yeah, well, way over from what we normally do. I don't think anybody minds. They're still watching, so I don't think there's a problem there. First off, I want to thank you for agreeing to do this. Now that people can actually hear you, and I don't have to relay what you said.
That was interesting.
Well, I'm hoping it was a much better show. They'll let us. I'm sure they'll let us know. The fact that they're still watching, I think it was a much better show. And you and I talked, and you were saying earlier that you want to release some stuff through me. So we'll keep in touch. I suspect you'll be on every once in a while, just because you've got a lot of interesting things to talk about.
Yeah, it's always an honor to come on the show, Ken. Like I say, I owe you a lot for getting me started in the radio, because when I had this body of knowledge and I didn't know what to do with it, and all of a sudden you put me on full circle and I can start releasing some of it.
I gotta say that Hawk is the one that put you on full circle. She's the one who introduced me to you. But yes. And then we kept in touch afterwards, because you were sending articles to me for the newsletter as it went out, and then I let you know what was going on with Witchcraft Academy. You've stopped in there a couple of times, and we have kept in touch and tried to help each other get things out. So I think it's more of a partnership than anything.
Yeah, that's more what it feels like. And anytime that you need a guest or want me to come on, I'll be happy to come on.
Fantastic. That means you're agreeing to be on several times a year. You know that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I kind of got that impression.
All right. Well, let's call this a show, and I want to thank everybody who's still watching for watching, and I want to thank everybody who will watch for watching, because we've gone over an hour and a half now, and so it's a long show, but I think it was an interesting show. It was well worth the time effort I put into it, and hopefully next month I'll have the wait music beforehand fixed and running properly. So
yeah. It was a lot of fun. There's still so much that we have to talk about, but it was a lot of fun. The time flew by, and I do appreciate you bringing me on the show. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Also.
All right, we will talk to everybody later. So have a good night. Have a good week. Have a good month. Have a good life.